Alright, we should be live now. Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart. I am joined by Brandon from WhataboutNintendo. How you doing, buddy?
Hey guys, I'm doing good enough, I guess.
Good enough. Well, you know, good enough is good enough. Sorry for the slightly late start for this show. We had some audio setup issues. It wasn't Brandon's fault. I thought it was. Everything on my end said it was right, but it was like a unique thing that, I don't know. But we fixed it, so it's working now. So for those who are new to the podcast, basically every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we talk about Nintendo. Usually the Nintendo news of the week. We talk about what may be happening in the future and whatever you guys bring up in the chat. So we will be doing a bit of Q&A as well throughout this discussion. For this week, we're going to be talking about basically the Nintendo Treehouse that happened. They had two different gameplay demonstrations, one for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity and another one for Pikmin 3 Deluxe. And there was also a Pikmin 3 demo that came out, and also we got a trailer for Hyrule Warriors as well. So there's different things we can sort of talk about here from all, that's like 4 different things to talk about, I guess, but it's basically about Hyrule Warriors and Pikmin 3, the two holiday games, the big ones that are coming out from Nintendo. So that's what we're talking about today. And yeah, that's pretty much the plan. What have you been up to, Brandon?
You know, I'm gonna be honest, I've been sick, just been, you know, staying home, trying to go to work when I can, because I need them hours, but mostly just staying home, trying to rest, so.
Okay.
Yeah, playing some Genshin Impact a bit.
I started that, actually.
It's pretty good.
I played like 30 minutes.
I made a funny mistake. So in the very beginning of the game, you're supposed to talk to that like little floating fairy person to start the quest.
Okay.
I didn't see them at all. I just ran straight past them. Didn't know I was supposed to talk to them.
You mean Paimon?
And yeah, Paimon.
Okay.
So I didn't talk to them at all because I wasn't paying attention to like the quest it was telling me. I was just like exploring.
I wanted to like climb over the. I wanted to
that.
climb through the valley. Like I was like, oh okay, if I can climb like in Breath of the Wild, can I climb all the way up? And then the stamina, the mechanics don't work out exactly the same in terms of climbing. Like it looks the same on the surface, but it's not. You're far more limited in Genshin Impact as compared to Breath of the Wild. There's not as much flexibility in terms of finding places to hide or rest as you climb. It's not the same, but I definitely tried at first. It was.
I feel like it's a little bit different, but it's mostly the same. From what I've played, I put like
here's the difference. Here's the difference. And maybe if I was better, maybe there would have been a way to get up. But in the very beginning, you're on the beach, right? And you're kind of like in a valley. I deemed, and maybe that was wrong of me to do so, but I feel like for most people, if not all people, save for some glitching, it's impossible to get to the top of the valley from the beach. You have to go around with your climbing ability. If it was Breath of the Wild, you would have been able to find a way to get up. It may have been challenging, but there would have been ways to sort of navigate through the rocks to get to the top.
I think it depends on the cliff side, because I've definitely done the same thing in Breath of the Wild where I just like stand on a cliff and wait for my stamina to go up and then keep climbing. Yeah. So I do that all the time in Genshin Impact. It's just not every cliff is like that.
The point I'm trying to say is that the way the cliffs are designed, they're not designed the same way the ones are in Breath of the Wild. Where
the game is designed to be very open, but at the same time, there's certain story places that they don't want you to access, which is different from Breath of the Wild. It's more like a typical RPG in that sense.
There's more limitations compared to Breath of the Wild. Yeah. But it's more of an RPG. Yeah, so like I'm not trying to say the game is like lesser than Breath of the Wild. I mean, well, first of all, every game is lesser than Breath of the Wild, pretty much.
Yeah, that's a very high bar.
But I'm not trying to. I guess it looks like a Breath of the Wild clone at first, but
it's a lot.
Once you actually play the game, you're like, no, this is different.
The game does not play like Breath of the Wild. There's certain aspects from it, like the climbing and things. Yeah. But when you're actually playing the game, it doesn't really feel like Breath of the Wild, except in terms of certain aspects of the exploration. Yeah. But the combat doesn't feel anything the same. The shrine the shrines are completely different. The way quests work are completely different. A lot of it's way different. But it is similar. It will scratch a similar-ish itch if you're like waiting for Breath of the Wild 2. But it's not a game that you're gonna feel like, oh, this is going for the same thing that Breath of the Wild was going for. It's not.
Yeah. If you're into RPGs though,
it's a really good RPG, especially for it being free.
Yeah. Like I said, I only played for 30 minutes, so I don't know all the details. I basically just got to the town, and that's when I called it a night.
My point was, I made it to the town without talking to Paimon, and I'm like, why can I not continue the story?
You made it all the way to the town without talking to her?
Yeah, dude, I went like 5+ hours without talking to her because I didn't know that was what I was supposed to do. Wow. I was just like, why can I not continue the story?
And you see, I was like looking up guides. I wouldn't have been able to go to...
I'm looking up guides and trying to figure out like what I'm supposed to do next, and they're telling me about these people like Amber. I'm like, who the heck is Amber? I've never seen you. I went to the places and then you're not there. It's just because I didn't talk to Paimon in the beginning to actually start the story.
So what did you do? Did you backtrack all the way, or?
Yeah, I just went all the way back.
Was she not following you?
No, she doesn't follow you until you talk to her the first time. Because you're supposed to talk to her to start the quest and then follow her. But I just completely ran past her and just kept going. Which I guess it was kind of cool that the game lets you do that. But at the same time, like,
you can't really progress.
You need to progress through the story, so...
Interesting.
I had to go back.
You were that guy that just...
And unfortunately, I didn't notice the skip travel... I didn't know what the skip travel points looked like at the time, so I didn't grab the one that's right on the beach. So I had to walk all the way back.
It's not really that far of a walk.
Well, they don't let you get the first skip travel point, so I had to walk all the way from the town back.
It's like a 10-minute walk. Assuming you don't find any enemies, I guess.
Yeah, it's not super long, but it was kind of like
yeah, it's still troublesome for sure. Yeah, huh?
So that was just me being a complete moron, though. I just wasn't paying attention to anything happening on screen. I was just like, I just want to explore, like I did Breath of the Wild. No.
Yeah, I just feel like I haven't had enough time to play games. Like, I play games almost every day, but the amount of time I'm able to put into them has been limited. Like, I was able to play the Pikmin 3 demo today. I didn't finish the demo, I just played for a few minutes. I'm still trying to 100% Mario Sunshine, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. And then, of course, you know, I've actually started playing through Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition as well. The first Hyrule Warriors that came out on Switch.
Nice.
So I've been playing all that, and then I did start, like I said, I started Genshin Impact. So I've kind of had my hands tied, and meanwhile in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, but I still haven't finished Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. I haven't touched Future Connected yet. So I've just had all these games I want to play and finish, and it's just a lot when I have, I guess, 2 jobs. So it's kind of been challenging. And then also the NBA Finals. I'm technically skipping out and watching the final half of the NBA Finals, but it doesn't look like it looks like it's over. So for those who care, and I won't talk about this too much because this is a Nintendo podcast, not a basketball podcast. Both the teams that I was rooting for all year are both in the finals. The Los Angeles Lakers and the Miami Heat. I was rooting for both. I'm actually from Miami, so it's my home team. And then the Lakers, I became a LeBron fan when he came to Miami, and then so I'm sort of a fan of him so wherever he goes. And they're both in the finals, and it looks like it's going to end the way I thought it would. Lakers in 6, but Miami pushed them to a game, so I feel like that suggests they're the second best team in the league. And that's it. I'm done with the basketball talk. For any of those who are curious, there it is. That's it. That's what I have to say on that. So let me check in with the chat real quick before we jump into the topics. DE Fox, woo woo, hello there. Raptorius, Ice Sonic, hello. David Haney, hello there. Shy Dino Gamers, good day. Yeah, I cannot wait for this game either. I'm assuming you're referring to Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I am very excited for this game.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm also surprisingly excited for Pikmin 3 Deluxe as well. So I think we're going to actually touch on Pikmin 3 first, and then we'll move into Hyrule Warrior discussion. But yeah, Hyrule Warriors is looking to be pretty good. I appreciate everyone understanding the technical difficulties, and just let me know there are any more technical difficulties, let me know if everything sounds fine, if everything looks fine. I'd appreciate that. Thomas Owen, happy to wait, man. We're used to waiting. Cough. Metroid Prime 4. Cough. Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard something from Super Metal Dave that they're hiring it's like proof that they are hiring game testers for Metroid Prime 4. Or rather, I don't think it's confirmation it's for Prime 4, but that they hire game testers. So they're hiring game testers. That means that they have some sort of playable build of some game.
Right, but that doesn't really mean that much.
I mean,
and I'm gonna be honest, I don't trust Super Metal Dave, like, not much at all.
Well, I think he was just reporting on facts. So I'm
not saying he's wrong this time. I'm just saying that when I hear that he says something, I'm instantly skeptical because I feel like he's gotten a lot of things wrong before.
He's gotten some pretty things right before too, though. Technically,
his track record's very.
Let's point out this when it comes to Metroid, though. Let me just say this one thing. E3 2017, he said there would be 2 Metroid games, and before E3 2017, there was like no hope of Metroid at all. So going into E3 2017 to say that there may be 2 Metroid games, I feel like that's something, right?
I don't remember exactly what happened there, but I recall somebody saying that he was actually reporting on something somebody else had already said, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I just don't know enough to trust him because I feel like he's been wrong in the past, but I need to look into it more.
I'll say with most people in general, no one gets everything right, no one gets everything wrong. I've gotten some things right, I've gotten some things wrong. Like, it's just kind of how it is. But I mean, it just kind of goes to show that I think in general with everything, you need to take it with a grain of salt. So yes, but I'm just saying, Metroid Prime 4, maybe we see something. I do not think it's coming out next year. I think it's a 2022 game. But I think
like it.
Yeah, and the primary reason I believe that at this stage isn't really so much in terms of when they started development, because it's kind of hard it's a little hard to gauge how long that development cycle could be. For example, this week we learned that Monster Hunter Rise has apparently been in development for about 4 years. So, and that game's coming out this March. So, yes, can a AAA game only take 3 years? Yes. Can it end up being more like 4 to 5? Also, yes. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And Metroid Prime 4 might even be like a quadruple A game. Like this, Nintendo, if you've been paying attention to all the hirings they've been doing at Retro Studios, they are definitely gearing up big time for Metroid. So I think
I will say it's hard to say how long a Metroid Prime game these days should take to make.
It used to take about 2 years.
Yeah, but we have no idea what the scope of this project is.
They really, the crunch time was a big element of their development for Metroid Prime 1 and 2.
There's also before HD development, and those games were kind of short. I mean, they were normal length for a single-player adventure game, but single-player adventure games aren't very long. The
standard for content in big games has increased, especially from Nintendo, I would say.
Yeah.
You don't really spend over 100 hours in Twilight Princess, for example. But if Nintendo were to release a new Zelda game now and it doesn't exceed 100 hours for most people, then people would be scratching their heads because the standard has been changed now. With Breath of the Wild, it's a 100+ hour game. Mario Odyssey, that's at least a 50-60 hour game, and if you're someone like me who wants to 100% it, it's definitely 100+ hours as well.
Yeah, I think I put 60 hours into Mario Odyssey and I didn't even 100% it.
Yeah,
so
it's a pretty big game compared to all other Mario games. It's huge. So the point is, the standard for Nintendo games are pretty large now, so that is also something else we should take into consideration when it comes to development for Metroid Prime 4. But either way, the point I'm trying to get at is that the reason why I think it's coming out in 2022 is because I'm of the perspective that we'll see Metroid Prime Trilogy first, and the 2D Metroid game. Because from what I understand, from what I've seen, from what I've been told, and all of that jazz, and woo-ha. All three of these games are in development. And 2D Metroid has been in development for a while, and Prime Trilogy has been ready for a while. So if that's really the case, you gotta take that with a grain of salt, because it's all rumor until it's proven true. I think those games have to come out before Prime 4. Especially, like, do they have to do 2D Metroid? They don't have to. That can come out whenever. It's like a separate entity. But Prime Trilogy, I think if they do have that, if it is a real thing, they're going to want that to come out first. And I think the reason we haven't seen it yet isn't because it's fake. It's because Prime 4 is taking a while, and they want it to come out not too long before it, because they want to use that to sort of acquaint fans to the Metroid series who haven't played it in years or have never played it before. And that will be the beginnings of, like, the marketing for Prime 4.
Yeah. And it makes sense that a 2D Metroid game should be done next year. Yeah. Simply because, like, if they wanted to... We know that when they made Samus Returns that they wanted to make the Fusion remake. So if they started on that in, mid-2017 after Samus Returns was done, then that's, 2021. That's a long time for a 2D game development,
I feel like maybe if the pandemic wasn't an element this year, it might have released. I don't know.
Maybe.
But, like, so here's the thing. Before 3D All-Stars was revealed, a lot of people were really, really doubting the existence of that game. People were also really, really doubting the existence of Pikmin 3. Yet throughout the year, I feel like, based off the sources we got, and Brandon and you and I think we're both pretty consistent on it. We're like, yeah, these games are real, they're coming, just you gotta be patient about it. And they took way longer than expected to be announced, but they were announced, they did happen. Pikmin 3, that's coming soon. But also, let's go back to Paper Mario. Paper Mario and 2D Metroid were rumored alongside of each other. Paper Mario has come and gone. The 2D Metroid thing hasn't, but we know that Mercury Steam wanted to work on another Metroid game,
right?
And that Nintendo was relatively pleased with their execution.
Next year's Metroid's 35th anniversary, right?
In August 2021.
So it makes sense to launch your Metroid titles that year.
I think so. But I mean, there's anniversaries all the time, so you could say it's like not really that important, right? But
yeah.
I think it is. This time around, I think they're going to do something about it. I mean, I made a video last Tuesday talking about Metroid's 35th anniversary, because I think this time there is something to it. They're doing something for Mario's 35th anniversary. There currently are rumors and some trademarks and such that suggest that there are 35th anniversary plans for Zelda as well. But Mario and Zelda are a much bigger deal than Metroid. But here's the distinction I think needs to be made, though. Or, well, I mean, it's my speculation at least. I believe Nintendo wants Metroid to get closer to Mario and Zelda. I think, in terms of quality, Metroid is deserving of it, but in terms of, I guess, appeal, like it just hasn't managed to appeal to as large of an audience. So, well, I think there's that potential. It hasn't been there yet, and I think with Metroid Prime 4, Nintendo wants it to get close to that level. Like, I think Prime 4 could potentially be like a 10+ million seller, which isn't as much as Mario or Zelda, but it might be half. And that would be a huge, huge stride for the series. It's definitely gonna be the best-selling Metroid there is, and I think there's a good opportunity to start like really talking about this series. And we just got 3D All-Stars, a 3-game pack for Mario's 35th anniversary. Maybe Nintendo does something similar for Zelda. And if they do that, well, there's this Prime Trilogy that's just been hanging around for a while. I'm predicting it. I'm predicting that by August 2021, we will at least get an announcement for Metroid Prime Trilogy on Switch. So I just think there's something going on there. We'll see, though. Yeah. And that was not a planned topic. That was just going off tangent, as usual. Let me see here. Got any ats? Hello there, Beverly Carter. How you doing? Thomas Owen. You still have to play the OR games too. That is absolutely right. I was talking about with my friend yesterday. I need to buy both of them. The first one's only $20 on the Switch eShop, and the other one's $30. Like, that's I think that's decent from what I've heard of the games. Like, I want it on my Switch. So
Speaking of that game, just real quick, if you guys haven't seen it, you guys should go watch Digital Foundry's video on that, the port for the Switch of Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I think that's the second one, right? It's Blind Forest, then Will of the Wisps.
Sounds right.
But anyways, whatever the new one is, they made a video on it. It's a great video, shows the challenges of 2D game development, which I didn't even know about. A lot of different reasons why 2D game development is actually hard on graphics cards, because they're built for 3D, not 2D art. So a lot of great insight in how they optimize that game for Switch. If you like tech and you like Ori, or you're just interested in the Switch in general, I would definitely recommend that video because it was super fascinating to me.
You ever wonder, like, what would have happened if they didn't do 3D gaming? Like, if they were just like, okay, let's continue to advance things with just 2D. Where would we be right now? Would it just basically be games like Ori, or would it be a little different?
Oof, I have no idea.
Yeah, right.
I feel like we have really expanded the 2D as well. Not as much as, because, a lot of developers have moved on to 3D games, but there's still, the indie community is doing some great stuff with 2D games, and I feel like we're still seeing that expansion into the 2D realm. So
yeah. And I guess
what we can do with that platform. And
maybe it's not even that simple, because there are different, even with 2D games, there are different perspectives. For example, look at the obviously the most standard is like the side scroller, right? You have that, but then you could even argue that something like Donkey Kong has a slightly different perspective as well. I'm talking about the original Donkey Kong, which is the one with the red girders. That wasn't even a side scroller; it's just like what you can do on one screen. But then there were even some games that had did have like a 3D perspective, where it was at an upward angle, but it was still in 2D. And then, of course, you have things like
isometric, I think is what that's called.
An isometric perspective. And then you also had things like The Legend of Zelda, the original, which was open world but on a 2D sort of map. And there's other perspectives that we should have. Another one, the Mode 7 racing. That was sort of like simulated 3D for like some racing games and things. For 2D platforms. And then of course you have Donkey Kong Country, which started using 3D models or to depict 3D designs, but still as a 2D side scroller. And things have evolved like that. And I guess if you look at games like Ori, they still use there's still some 3D in there. There's still polygons in there.
There's occasional 3D elements for Ori himself and the enemies. A lot of the enemies are 3D models, but pretty much all of the actual environment is 2D art. It's a lot of layers.
Yeah. So it's fun to kind of look at how games have sort of evolved visually. So I definitely I'll probably have to check that out, Brandon, because I haven't seen that Digital Foundry video. And actually, I want to. We'll just keep it in the back of your mind, but I want to talk about the whole resolution thing about Pikmin in a moment.
Oh yes, I have things to say about that.
So we'll be talking about that shortly as well. Ronnie Fazio, if I remember correctly, Metroid has never been that big in Japan, which I always found weird because it totally seems like something they'd like. I think, if it just some minor tweaks and appropriate marketing, especially nowadays with word of mouth over social media, I think Metroid can definitely succeed even in markets it didn't previous, probably, hopefully even Japan.
I mean, people are already super hyped for it, and people haven't even played any of the games. There's a huge audience of people who go nuts hearing Prime, and they haven't even played any of them. It's weird.
Yeah. A lot of people have played. Metroid Prime is it's literally one of the highest rated games of all time. Not that many people played that game. I think it sold 2 million, slightly over 2 million on the GameCube, and that was the best selling. I think it's maybe Super Metroid.
It's the best selling Metroid game, period.
How much does Super Metroid sell? Because Super Metroid sold a lot.
That I don't know. That one might be the best, but I know Prime.
They're 1 and 2 in terms of sales.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've looked at this before, and I just don't remember.
Yeah.
Well, the original Metroid sold 2.73 million according to this.
Really? The original Metroid?
Metroid Prime sold 2.84 million though, so it's actually close to 3 million. Yeah. And then Super Metroid sold 1.42. So yeah, the original apparently according to this, the original Metroid sold more. There's a reference here, so we could check the source if we needed to. But point is, no Metroid game has sold over 3 million apparently. And by today's standards,
which isn't terrible, but it's not
for
good.
What
for a major IP, it's not good.
If you look at how high Metroid Prime is on Metacritic, you'll be shocked based off its sales. Yeah. So, but you know that when your best-selling game is on Nintendo GameCube, like Nintendo's second worst-selling home console of all time, you know, there's that's part of the reason why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Booper, no worries. Your presence is always appreciated. Phil Spencer, Metroid Prime 4 will probably be the last game released for the Switch. I don't know if I agree with that. Now, let me explain why. One is because I'm not sure if there will even be a last year for the Switch. I'm not saying it won't have like a final year. Nintendo won't just move on to another like Switch 2 or something. But there is some talk right now that it might be like that. There was this interview that came out from Bloomberg where there's some sort of analyst, and I don't remember the name, I'm sorry, but basically there is some discussion about Nintendo adopting a similar model to Apple's iPhone, where they basically run the same software, but they just kind of update the hardware that runs that software every year. So the idea behind it is that this base Switch would still run software even for several revisions in the future. And I guess at some point they would have to like discontinue that base Switch. But
I mean, they do that with phones. I think most games don't even support like the iPhone 5 anymore. It's like even the iPhone 6 is being cut off.
Yeah, so, I work with a lot of phones and stuff at work, and sometimes people come in with phones that are very old, and they're like, "Why isn't this working?" And I have to explain that, well, as they update like cell towers and stuff, some phones just don't support the same frequencies anymore, and they won't work. So they could conceivably do that. I feel like while some people might be upset by that, it may technically allow you to play like games for longer on your Switch.
My only issue with that is that home console development and mobile development are very different. Like optimizing a mobile game around several platforms is way easier than optimizing a full-on like Breath of the Wild 2 for 4 different platforms, you know?
Yeah.
It's not the same. Like your Candy Crush app is gonna be way easier to make work on multiple devices.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
Full-on home console game.
That's true. Like with games, you do have to sort of. There's some optimization for that particular system. Even with the interview we referenced earlier, in terms of the development cycle for Monster Hunter Rise, there was a question in terms of why, if they consider Monster Hunter World for Switch, and they brought up how it usually you have to seriously take the system into account when you're developing a particular system. So oftentimes, when Switch doesn't get third-party platforms, it isn't necessarily because the Switch couldn't run it if they decided to get a team and make a dedicated port of that game.
Right.
But it requires a lot more work if they never made that game with that system in mind.
To properly do a port on the Switch, a lot of times, especially for like Monster Hunter World, that game runs pretty bad on even the Xbox One. So to make a version that would actually work well on the Switch, you'd need to make like dedicated assets and essentially build a whole new game. So why just not build a new game?
Yeah.
And that's what they did.
Yeah. To go back to the point though, like I'm not saying like for sure that the current Switch will play Nintendo games that are coming out in 2024 or 2025. That's not what I'm trying to say necessarily, but I am considering it as a possibility at least. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not sure if Prime 4 would be the last game on Switch, the last big one.
I think they'll go the route of what the next-gen systems are doing, where a lot of their games are at
cross-platform titles.
Cross-platform with a few games. Even within the first year, both on Sony and Microsoft, they have exclusive next-gen games. So I think it'll be like that, where if a game can come over to the original Switch, they will make it work. But they might have some, especially like third parties, probably will have a lot of exclusive titles on that platform, because that's what's happening next gen, and I feel like that's just what makes the most sense anyways.
Yeah, and also backwards compatibility. I mean, Nintendo's done it before. Like, for example, the Wii played GameCube games, the Wii U played Wii games.
3DS plays DS, played Game Boy.
They usually only go one generation back, but that might stop. I wouldn't be surprised if, from this point forward, any if, let's say, 10 years from now, especially if they go full digital, I don't think there's too much holding them back from being able to have a game like Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild run on the third Switch just by being able to download on eShop.
I think the
problem would be that they probably would do it with cartridges. So if you don't have, if you don't, that would be the real thing that would hold them back from having it.
I feel like we're gonna have physical media for a while. I mean, even next gen, they have digital options, but there's still the physical media, and most people are still saying they want the one with the physical media. So I feel like we're gonna get backwards compatibility natively with your actual cartridges, just like you did with the last, every other portable system Nintendo's ever released. So
yeah,
I don't think we'll have to worry about that.
Yeah. And the other thing, just going back to the question, for Metroid Prime 4 potentially be like the final big Switch game, like its swan song sort of thing. Some people have been talking about that. Like, some people have been speculating there'd be like a cross release, like kind of like how Twilight Princess was, how Breath of the Wild was, Metroid Prime 4 would be that. I'm not sure, and I'm only saying that because my expectation for Metroid Prime 4's release is 2022. I don't necessarily think that the next generation Switch is going to come out in 2022. I think it might be a 2023 thing. Because if next year we are getting a Switch revision, it would be weird if Nintendo were to jump into next generation just in the next year for 2022. Also, the Switch came out March 2017, and the Switch is doing really well. Why would Nintendo cut that short? They would want to do it as long as they can. I think the Wii went 6 years. So they may try and push it as long as they can. Like, they still may release the system, but they're going to support that other system at the same time.
Yeah.
Point is, I'd be surprised if Nintendo did that. Like, maybe, let's say, hypothetically speaking, this Switch Pro or what have you, 4K Switch, Switch Plus, whatever the name is, comes out this March, which it may take a little bit longer, but let's say it comes out March 2021. The absolute earliest they would be able to come out with a system, I think, would be holiday 2022. So if Metroid Prime 4 ends up being a holiday 2022 game, I could see it then happening, but they still would be cutting things short because that'd be less than a 5-year cycle before they move on to the next generation system. That I'm a little bit skeptical of. So I wouldn't. My personal expectation isn't for a next generation Switch until 2023, kind of giving each major revision a 2-year gap.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Though if we don't see an updated Switch next year, then I'm gonna be like, yeah, probably 2022. So I feel like they're gonna want to release something
I would agree with that.
Offers a little bit more oomph.
I would agree with that.
Because even when the Switch launched, it was pretty underpowered. Yeah. So if we're in 2022 and we don't even have an update like Switch Plus or whatever, I'm gonna be like, really? Nothing?
Yeah, except I don't believe that. I think there's something coming next year. Yes, I do. And part of that isn't just the hardware. Like, there's gonna be a lot of games to come out next year. Like, next year's gonna be much better than this year in terms of software from Nintendo. I'm gonna read off these last couple chats here, and then we're gonna move into Pikmin. Birdman Anatomy. So Capcom doesn't know if there's a Switch Pro. Switch Pro. I don't buy it, Capcom. I think I have to go back and read the interview specifically, but I think they just weren't speaking on it. And I think that's pretty much it.
I didn't see anything but the headline, so I can't really talk about it too much.
I wonder if I can pull it up, the interview, real quick, so I can read it.
I imagine it's probably just them even if they did know, they couldn't say anything. So
yeah. I mean, this article is bad. I'm gonna Control S switch pros.
Game media sites not reporting things well? What is this? I've never heard of such a thing.
No. When asked about a potential Switch Pro, okay, so according to Sujimoto, I'll put this so you guys can see it. According to Sujimoto, everything we saw these past few weeks was running on a standard Switch. This is in relation to Monster Hunter Rise, the footage we've seen from at the Tokyo Game Show. When asked about a potential Switch Pro, he stated, "Well, obviously we have no idea whatsoever what the plans would be in that direction, but even at the moment you actually have two different Switch hardwares you are targeting. You got the original Switch, which has the docking mode, so that's something we've already borne in mind to make sure the game isn't making any undue assumptions on the hardware owned by that player." Okay, so I really don't think there's anything to take from that. I think, if anything, the only thing to take away from that is that, yes, developers consider multiple things for the Switch because there's two different graphical modes for Switch already. Even if, is it possible that they don't know anything because there isn't anything? Yes, but I think also that if there was something, they still wouldn't say anything that they weren't supposed to. So I would just, yeah, we'll see what happens, but I don't really think that interview tells us much. Control-Alt-Dan, do you still think there will be any Metroid announcement this year? Unless it's at the Game Awards, no. I think at this point we have to wait until next year for that.
Yeah.
Whenever Nintendo starts making announcements for 2021, that's when it starts becoming a possibility. Right now, Nintendo's focusing on their holidays. I don't think there's any Metroid thing happening for this year at this stage. Is it possible they have a surprise December announcement for a 2D Metroid? It's possible, I just think it's highly unlikely. I think if anything from Nintendo is coming out that hasn't been announced yet that could come out this year, it would be Bravely Default 2 for December. And at this point, I feel like, I don't know, it's skeptical. There are some reports suggesting that an announcement is right around the corner for Bravely Default 2. So maybe it hits December, but it might even come out in January.
Announcement yet, so.
Yeah, so we'll see on that one. But if we're probably gonna get Bravely Default 2 before Metroid is my point here. So I'll wait until next year for that, unless they have something for the Game Awards. Maybe. Benjamin W., I know this is off topic, but what do you think we will see at the Game Awards, if anything? I think we'll see something from Nintendo. I don't think it's going to be a Smash character. I'm hoping Breath of the Wild, or unless Nintendo's going to go big with Metroid next year, that. One or the other, maybe Bayonetta. There is a video in the pipeline for that, just for the record, but you might not see it this week. You might see it next week while I'm on vacation. But let's... Birdman's asking, wait, Bravely Default 2 is delayed? No, it's not officially delayed yet, but it's technically slated for 2020, and we are in October, and there have been no updates in terms of a release date. So we're not sure if it's gonna maintain that 2020 release date. It would have to be like a late announcement for December, but yeah. So we'll get back to the chat in a little bit. Let's talk about Pikmin now so we can move forward with the discussion here. So we got to see footage for Pikmin 3 Deluxe. I was relatively pleased with what we saw. There's a lot of HUD elements improved. There's even like a hint system where you can actually see arrows and things of that nature that wasn't in the original game. So all of that seemed to flow pretty well. There are pointer controls, that is confirmed. They seem to work pretty well. I actually played the demo. I played with a Switch Pro controller. I liked how it was playing. I felt pretty good. So all of that, I think those are things we didn't really quite know about, and now we do. And they also confirmed the other difficulty mode, Ultra Spicy mode. And for someone like me who really likes challenging games, that gives me even more reason to buy Pikmin 3 again. So I'm kind of at a point where I'm pretty excited about what they've shown so far, and especially after having played it like a couple hours ago. I do sort of like what they've done with this game so far. I'm more on the side of buying now than I was before I saw the Treehouse footage.
Okay. For me, I'm gonna be honest straight up, I probably will not buy this, at least not at launch.
How dare you not spend your money?
It's just, like, I feel like there's not enough content added for me personally to want to play through it again. They didn't show a lot of the new missions, but they mostly looked similar to, like, the competitive multiplayer mode where you just try to get, like, as many points as possible in a certain amount of time. Like, that's what it felt like. It didn't feel like an extension of the story, because the story, you're in an area, you're going through the days, you're exploring as the days go on. This is like you're in an area for one day, you're just trying to find everything, and then you're done. It feels more like the multiplayer modes than the actual story campaign, which disappointed me. But we haven't seen enough of it for me to really
it was
like,
a small glimpse. It may not be done in the same way as the main campaign, but I still think we're gonna get story elements from this.
Right.
So I feel like the jury's still out on that. They really only gave us a glimpse of it. But I do see your point. It didn't look like the traditional style game, but I think I should probably go back and watch it again to be sure.
Yeah, I need to watch it again.
Yeah.
But
I'm still happy about new content though.
Yeah, it's nice, but
is it gonna have?
Really
I guess the question is it gonna have like new
guess.
areas and new enemies, things like that?
Yeah,
like I want to see some new
like that's what I want to see.
Visual elements in the game, and that's something that I feel like I'm not sure we'll see. Well, that is definitely important to note, I guess, because if it is just basically recycling the assets and just sort of remixing what they already had, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's
not enough to make me buy the game again.
Yeah, like when it comes to...
I will say...
Go on.
I will say if they added online multiplayer, 100% I would buy the game.
But I don't
Day
think
one.
they have. No.
They didn't. They didn't.
Yeah.
That was a big disappointment because I was really hoping that they would add, because they added the co-op, which I don't think was the thing in the story.
No.
But it's not online. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, it's co-op, but I don't have anybody to play with. So it's like, not really anything new for me there.
Yeah,
They have some great multiplayer modes in the game too.
Yeah.
That I played locally when I owned the Wii U version. They were very fun. I would have loved to see those be online. They showed off that bingo mode.
Yeah, seeing bingo
version.
battle looked fun. I guess it has a natural advantage of being on the Switch because the Switch has like technically multiplayer built in with the two Joy-Cons, right, at all times.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a neat little thing. I'll say that going back to the Olimar missions thing, because I am kind of curious if there will be like new areas or anything like that in there, because I want to see that. And I feel like part of the excitement I've had for other DLC we've seen in other Nintendo games, like for example Breath of the Wild or Future Connected in Xenoblade 1, or actually Torn of the Golden Country for Xenoblade 2, is that it's new areas with new enemies and things of that nature. So new challenges, like there are new things modeled into the game, so there's more of the world to explore that you could not see beforehand. Right. And that's what's really excited me about DLC before. So we don't really get too many new areas or any new areas or anything like that. And it's basically just going back to old areas and just sort of remixing the challenge a little bit. I'll say, well, that's still, it's not a bad thing that they have that content in there. It's still an improvement. It's not as much of an improvement if there isn't like new things to actually see.
Yeah, I've heard some people saying that Pikmin 3 might be the best Wii U port, and I'm like, I don't see that at all. First off, the first Wii U port, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, not only did it, and we're going to talk about this in the resolution, not only did they raise the resolution a lot, they fixed the frame rate bugs, they added the double item mechanic, which wasn't a thing, and they added a whole battle mode with 8 new areas there. So that's a ton of brand new content.
Yeah.
And then we're getting next what?
I want to point out there's also
we're
HD
getting
Rumble.
Bowser's. Yeah, HD Rumble. So and then with the 3D world plus Bowser's Fury?
Yes.
Yeah. That adds a whole new story campaign.
Well, we don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, we haven't seen enough of it, but
it's definitely at least new areas.
Looks.
Yeah.
It still looks to be way more extensive than what we're seeing in Pikmin. So, I don't think it's probably not going to be the worst Wii U port. I think that probably still be Tropical Freeze, just because they barely added anything to that. But I definitely don't see people. I don't understand these people are saying it's.
Have you gotten a chance to play the demo yet?
I have not. I need to.
I think you should, because while I think saying it's the best Wii U port, that there's some competition there for sure. I do like the improvements they've made, and playing the game visually, it looks fine. Could it be better? Sure, but it looked nice playing it on my television, my 1080p television. So I didn't really feel like it's aged well visually, I think. But at the same time, I haven't noticed any tremendous visual enhancements. And Brandon, I guess we can kind of touch on that now. Well, before we do, I just want to say that I felt there's a lot of little changes with the HUD and a lot of little quality of life things that they've done. That seems where the focus has been, a lot of quality of life changes. And I feel like those are all really good. So they had to kind of adapt this for the Switch because there is no second screen. And so far, I kind of like it. I might like the way the game plays more now because it's all in one place and I can kind of access it more easily, at least for me, in the way my gaming setup is. So I'm kind of I never felt like the gamepad.
Yeah, I felt like the gamepad detracted from Pikmin 3 more than it added.
Some people argue otherwise. Just for me, I just never.
I didn't like it.
I mean, at the time, I gave it a try. I was all in on Nintendo's all right, this dual screen gameplay, it's great.
I was big on the gamepad back then, and I didn't even like it. I was like, no, this is not good.
It's just having the two things separate. Just kind of, I kind of just wish I could just access everything quickly with a button instead, and just stare at the same place. I think dual screen gameplay doesn't work as well when there's a lot more separation between the two different screens. On the DS, the screens are right next to each other, so it's really just more two screens.
You can see them at
one
once.
big screen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a little different. So my point is that I personally feel like, so far from what I've played, it just kind of is connecting every aspect of Pikmin 3 from the Wii U in a more streamlined kind of way. It feels more streamlined to me. That's what I'm trying to say. So far, it feels a little bit nicer to me. So in that regard, in terms of the quality of life changes, I feel like the game has been improved. And visually, it doesn't look bad. It looks good. It's still eye-pleasing for me. But is it better? We recently got some news from the demo, so it could change by the time the game comes out. But let me see here, because I tweeted it out, or I retweeted it, actually. Let me see. I think, Brandon, you saw it, right?
Yeah, I saw it. Because it confirmed exactly what I have been pixel counting, except obviously I haven't
been a pixel count handheld mode, but
handheld mode's new.
Yeah, so.
But it's what I expected.
Pikmin 3 Deluxe demo runs at 720p, 30 frames per second docked, 576p, 30 FPS handheld.
Which to me makes absolutely 0 sense, because if you look at the Wii U version, it runs 720p 30, and it has, from what I remember now, maybe it had some performance issues, but I don't remember any significant performance issues.
I want to point out that they also had to render, there was a second screen that they had to worry about as well, which took some processing power.
Yeah, that's something devs have been very vocal about, that this second screen, if you actually want to use it in a significant way, it does take processing power, because you have to render out different things to a different screen. So you don't have that issue, and you have way more processing power. Even in handheld mode, the Switch has more processing power than the Wii U in literally every single way. So why does it look worse than the Wii U version in handheld mode? That just doesn't make. And I have no idea why. It looks the same in dock mode.
It took me a
second
second
it looks worse in handheld mode.
That is strange.
Than the Wii U version.
That is
makes
strange.
No sense to me.
Like, I could understand if like it was just one thing and they didn't want to program like an improved version, but handheld mode should be able to run it the same. We've seen them do it before. They did it with Breath of the Wild, and that was like a launch game for the Switch. 720. The handheld mode for Switch matched the Wii U version, at least in terms of resolution. I don't know if maybe there are any other like differences between that handheld mode on Switch versus Wii U, but yeah, it is strange. I didn't really consider that, Brandon, that the handheld version is worse than the Wii U version of Pikmin 3, and it just doesn't need to be. So that is interesting, but it is a demo, right? So maybe it's better once the final version comes out.
Maybe I would very much be surprised. I'm not expecting that. I expect it to be the exact same. I mean, it's the same 720p pixel count we've seen in all the trailers, all the released gameplay footage of the game, now the demo too, and the game comes out this month. Yeah, we're weeks away. So I doubt that will change.
Yeah, my belief is that it's probably this. I'm just hoping that they improve it, but so I guess it's strange because what I was thinking was that they just weren't going to. They just decided not to touch the visuals. Okay, but they did touch the visuals because it's worse in handheld mode. That's a. Just want to reiterate, Brandon. I feel like that's an interesting point. Now, maybe there is some things that they have to do to make things run in handheld mode, because it's not like the Switch is like significantly more powerful than the Wii U, right? It's a different hardware, and while it is overall better, it's not like 100% better in every single category, right?
It pretty much is, to be honest. It's better in literally every way.
But
the GPU's faster, the RAM's better.
But in
there's
handheld
more of it,
mode,
it's faster. CPU, yeah, everything. Because the only thing that changes between handheld mode and dock mode is the RAM speeds are slightly lower. It still has the same amount of RAM, but they're slightly lower, and the graphics, the GPU itself is underclocked a little bit. The CPU is the same. Everything else is the same.
Is it?
So even in that, every single aspect is still either on par or better than the Wii U. Like the graphics, literally everything's better. Even in handheld mode, everything's better.
Maybe what it is just...
There's not a single aspect that I can think of that is even on par.
Now, I don't like saying this, but I'm gonna read a Ring Fit Master super chat. Thank you very much for the super chat. Ring Fit Master said, one reason why it looks worse. It's called laziness. So I'll just say that I usually don't like calling developers lazy, because if you play that demo, you're gonna notice a lot of subtle changes. The game seems to flow pretty nicely, I think. So I wouldn't call it lazy necessarily. I feel like it's maybe not the right word, but maybe low budget. Like maybe they were like, okay, look, this is what we're gonna do with the game. We're not gonna go into the visuals that much. And from that perspective, that they didn't plan on changing around the visuals because they didn't want to put that investment into it. Maybe they just didn't want to put that much time into optimization either. So instead of taking time to optimize it in handheld mode to run it in 720p, they instead just say, hey, look, 576p requires minimal optimization, so let's just do that.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me, unless they're going to improve it later on. It's one or the other. That's what I think.
Right. I wonder if it's some kind of like legacy thing that they have to change to make it work better on the Switch hardware, because this game originated on the Wii. This was originally going to be a Wii game. It was going to be a very, very late Wii title, and then they shifted over to Wii U, and now they're shifting over to Switch, and that's 2 generations ahead. Hardware is very different. The architecture is very different. Maybe they just didn't want to optimize it to work on the Switch's hardware well enough, so they're just like, whatever.
Too much effort.
Yeah, because it's the only Wii U port that didn't get any sort of resolution boost.
The other interesting thing is that
unless it already hit 1080p.
Yeah, the other interesting thing though is that this game was supposed to come out earlier this year. According to Emily Rogers, it was supposed to come out like in the first half of this year. And so it's been delayed. Was it delayed for any particular reason, or was it just a situation like just strange, you know? Like we don't know what happened exactly. My speculation is this though. My speculation is that what we're getting with Pikmin 3 Deluxe is pretty much the game. It's been done. And they haven't really touched on it for a while. So they decided, okay, this is how much we're going to invest in this product. And this is what we're going to devote our resources to. We're going to focus on quality of life changes, adapting it to Switch, adding some additional content. But from what we are seeing, apparently, Brandon, it's just recycled assets, really. It's not like adding too much new assets into the game. So it's just really repurposing the content they already had there and making it fit more nicely on Switch. But they weren't going to put enough of an investment to really improve the visuals that much. And that was their goal. They made sure the game runs smoothly for their target, but it's not an ambitious target, just a target.
It's really not.
And the game's pretty much been done for a while. And what happened is that maybe Nintendo's like, hey, look, we could release this game now, but based off the way things are happening for our holiday lineup, we're going to have to move it up a little bit. So they changed things around, and even though the game's been done, they haven't been working on it since these last few months. They've just been saving it for this October release. And I think most people will kind of agree to that, at least to an extent, because why would Nintendo release a Wii U port and not a Wii U port of a game that's gonna sell millions like 3D World Deluxe, but like for Pikmin, a more or less popular Nintendo franchise, at the end of October? Usually we get like big multi-million selling games around that time. So I think this is part of the situation of perhaps pandemic or Nintendo having to slow things down, getting ready for 2021. I think that's part of the thing here. But basically, yeah, that's my speculation, that they didn't have a lot of expectations for this game, maybe. Like, not so much in terms of it not being a good game, just like they didn't want to put that much money into it, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Pikmin's not really a huge series. And maybe it has the chance to become a bigger series with this game on the Switch.
Sure.
But it's never really sold that well, so I can see why they didn't want to. Maybe they just didn't want to put a ton of work into something that they weren't sure was gonna pan out, or maybe it wasn't even really supposed. I doubt it was ever really supposed to be a big project. It was probably just supposed to be something that they were just gonna get out to have another game in their lineup, and because people have been asking for it for a long time, and they just wanted to make sure that it played better, but didn't necessarily look better. I feel like it's the same reason, or a similar reason to why Mario 64 and the collection doesn't run at 16:9, even though it's totally possible. I feel like it's just something that they were like, we'd have to do too much programming for this game's not popular enough for it to be worth it for us, so we're just not going to touch it.
Yeah.
There's like, I don't think they thought people would care.
So when they say touch it, like they did put work into this game. It just wasn't in the visual department.
Right. That's what I'm saying on that specific aspect.
Yeah, and the game still looks good. Just saying. Like, I played it on my television. It looks fine. Like, it's not like this game looks like a bloody terrible mess. The game is pleasing to the eye. It's still a pretty game, but it's basically the same game visually from the Wii U. Maybe there's been some subtle changes, but it's nothing that's very clear, at least.
Yeah, I've seen the comparisons, and obviously YouTube, its compression not good.
Yeah,
so
that's another thing, though.
Very subtle things that are different, but overall, I don't think it's anything that you're gonna notice unless it's side by side.
Yeah, maybe not even then. But I'll tell you that playing the game, it looks a lot nicer than what I was seeing during the Treehouse. There is that compression there. Like,
oh yeah,
I'll say that what we saw last week during the Treehouse did not do the game justice visually. Like, if that's your only impression of the game, like if you have a Switch, download the demo. It's free. Try it out. I think if you play it, you might be like, oh, this looks fine. You know, like, so I don't think the visuals is a huge issue.
If you're used to Switch graphics, you're not gonna think it's that much worse than anything else you really see on the Switch.
Yeah. So I think it's fine. Could it be better? Yes, but it's fine. That's what I think. Overall, it's not, for me, it's not a deal breaker.
Yeah,
Ultra
I mean,
spicy
I wouldn't
mode,
buy
though,
the
is a
game
deal
if
maker.
it was in 1080p and 720p in handheld. I still wouldn't buy it just because it's not something that's a nice thing to have if you're already wanting to purchase it. But it's not something that makes you purchase the game, I think.
Yeah.
Unless you just really want to see it. Like, there are some games, like if Xenoblade Chronicles 2 got a pro patch, like I'd play that game again just to play it with actually good image clarity.
There's a lot of like blurry moments.
rough.
There's some little glitches here and there. At least for me, in my experience, there was.
Yeah.
You can see how much better that game could look because there was a lot of it was a dynamic resolution and it dipped down a lot, especially in handheld mode.
Especially in handheld mode, it went to like 360p almost.
Yeah.
In the handheld mode.
Yeah. So that game would definitely benefit from it. Pikmin is a very consistent. It is what it is.
I think it's a locked resolution. There's no dynamic res here. There's also no attempt at anti-aliasing, so you won't see any sort of blur that comes from low resolution games with anti-aliasing.
Yeah. So I want to check in with the chat here. First, Ronnie Fazio added me. The Byleth, Banjo, and Terry amiibo went up for pre-order on Amazon Japan. However, the date is for 2021, a placeholder date. Hopefully, we don't have to wait till fall. I don't think we'll have to wait that long. No, is it going to be immediate? No, but it's not that long. It is a placeholder date.
I really want that Banjo amiibo though.
100%. Yep. Birdman. The Switch version of Breath of the Wild has improved lighting and frame rate, and the resolution is 900p instead of 720p. So it has other improvements. I wasn't aware of that. Well, I probably just forgot because it's been a few years. Okay.
I know that there was a lot of people who thought that the game was going to have improved lighting because they actually updated the game for both systems, like since we first saw it. I don't think the Switch version actually has improved lighting, but it does have better frame rate and the resolution bump.
Okay.
Otherwise, as far as I know, the graphical settings are the exact same. It just has a higher resolution and it runs faster because the Switch is better hardware.
Interesting.
Now, I could be mistaken. It's been years since this game came out, but that's what I recall. Because I remember being somebody who was also like, yeah, the Switch version's going to look way better. Because when we saw the version running on the Switch, we hadn't seen the Wii U version again because, well, they were targeting to talk about the Switch. So we saw it looked better, and we were doing comparison shots, and we're like, man, the Switch version looks so much better. But then the Wii U version got updated as well, and it looks the exact same, just lower resolution, and it ran worse. I remember that was a big thing. Like, I was doing graphics comparisons at the time and making videos, and then it turned out that it was all just on the Wii U as well.
I'm just trying to, like, look up if there's any... Alright, so we'll just pull up these bullets real quick, see if that kind of gives us a decent idea of the differences. Both are frame rate of 30 frames per second, both versions offer the same content. On TV, Nintendo Switch version runs at 900p, while the Wii version is 720. The Switch version has higher quality environmental sounds. As a result, the sound of steps, water, grasses are more realistic and enhance the game's open air feel. The physical copy of Wii version is 3 GB. Okay, that's not really a big deal. But so it's basically just resolution and better audio in the Switch version. Okay, there you go. So there were some changes, some improvements, but not a lot. The audio thing is kind of important. Like Breath of the Wild's audio seemed the just hearing everything in that game, it adds to the experience.
Oh.
But let me just continue on with the chat here. DE Fox, I never played Pikmin 3, but I'm going to try out the demo, and if I like it, I'll get the game for Switch. I think that's the beauty of a demo. You can try it out without having to waste money and see if you like it. If you like it, you go for it. But, Brandon, is there anything else for Pikmin 3 that you want to bring up? And going beyond just visuals, like, from what you've seen of the game, is it exciting you in any way, or you're just still kind of waiting to learn more?
I want to see more of the new missions to see if they're actually like a good amount of new, as we were talking about, like actually new environments, new enemies and stuff.
Sure.
That's what I was hoping for. So
Sure.
if they add that, I might end up getting it. But if not, I'm gonna be honest, it's not enough to bring me back to that game. So I am undecided, but probably not gonna pick it up again.
Okay. That I'm actually I think I'm gonna get the game. Yeah. But
I would
we'll see.
love it if they added an update that added online multiplayer, because all those modes would be so fun to play. But until that happens, or until we find out somehow that the modes are that new Olimar missions or whatever are actually bigger than what they have shown, I am not hyped for it.
Well, we'll be learning a little bit more about the game in the coming days. I think it's a pretty decent package, so I'm excited about it. But let's move on to Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity. So, we got to see a little bit more details on the game. There's a lot of little things that I think could make a big difference. We got to see more gameplay for Urbosa and Zelda, and we also got that trailer that included King Rom, Robbie, and Purah. And then also there were some gameplay details we saw in the Treehouse. For example, there was mention of what's his face? I literally just talked about this in the video that came out today. The Giga Master Koga.
Oh yes,
Master Koga is in the game to some capacity. And there's also Koroks in the game. You can find Koroks throughout your adventure. And the biggest, most hypest, craziest thing I saw in the Treehouse footage was Impa summoning a frog. I thought that was awesome. Because I'm a Naruto fan, and apparently ninjas do that. Like, it's not just a Naruto thing. That's just kind of part of the folklore of ninjas. It looks awesome.
Which I wasn't aware of. I had only ever seen that in Naruto before.
Yeah, so I thought it was just a straight up Naruto reference. I still feel like when the developers were working on it, they're like, yeah, people are gonna compare bears to Naruto. Like, I think they were definitely aware that would be there, but it probably is just because that's just a part of ninja folklore.
Probably.
Yeah. Discount League is saying the Lakers just won the finals. Well, yeah, I expected that. So, LeBron got another one. I'll have to check with the details later, but cool. So, but it's kind of like going back to Hyrule Warriors. Like, from what we've seen of the characters, I am kind of getting the sense that there's a little bit more depth to these characters compared to the previous Hyrule Warriors game. And I've been playing it this week a little bit, and I understand that as you progress through the game, you kind of expand on your moveset a little. Just saying, like, from the footage we've seen so far, and I'm going to assume most of it's early, there seems to be a lot going on there, because it's your traditional attacks, but you mix in all the rune abilities as well. And I've seen several specials from the characters. I feel like there's going to be a decent amount of variety with the combat here, actually. And that was one of my biggest concerns for this game.
It's great because you not only do you have like the base move set for each character, but you also have a separate rune move set that differs. It's not just the same runes that you saw in Breath of the Wild used the exact same way. They are the same runes, but they each use them in unique ways to do unique things that, benefit their fighting style, which I think is super cool. So you have like this almost 2 movesets per character, and then you also have things like being able to dodge and slow down time and do that flurry rush, and then you got being able to pick up items. And I think two of the coolest things that they showed off here was, first off, the fact that they actually have the Breath of the Wild map as the UI for getting to the levels and the different like shops and different things you can unlock, which I thought looked amazing because it's literally the Breath of the Wild map. I freaked out for a second because I thought we were going to be able to explore that whole map, but it's just a menu. Right. The levels are very big though, which is nice.
Yeah, we're still gonna be able to explore a lot, but just it's not gonna be an open world. It's just like big sections.
Right. So we got that, and then the second most hype thing I was excited for was the fact that this is something I've wanted to be able to do in the actual Breath of the Wild game, but you can take those weapons that you get from like the bigger enemies, and then you can, if you have a bunch of the same ones, you can use it to level up that weapon instead of just having a bunch of the same crappy weapon all the time. It's great. I love that they added that to this game. I really hope that that's something they add to Breath of the Wild 2. Even if it's not as simplified as this, maybe there's like a shop, like a blacksmithing shop you could go to upgrade weapons and stuff.
It makes a lot of sense because there used to be blacksmiths. In Breath of the Wild, it's all, not there because everyone's dead or gone. But before everything, there should be blacksmiths. That makes sense because it's actually a lot of civilization there before the war. But with Breath of the Wild 2, the idea is that there's going to be some rebuilding going on, hopefully. And if that's the case, maybe we see some more villages, some more towns, some reconstruction, and potentially even blacksmiths, which could mean that, yes, we get to, like, build things, repair things, and improve upon them in Breath of the Wild 2. Kind of like what we're seeing in this game, which, I guess for me, that's very RPG-ish. I'm not saying I hate RPGs. I do like RPGs, but sometimes like I just don't care to mess with a whole bunch of menus. I just want to sort of jump into the fray of things.
Yeah, I feel that. Sometimes like Xenoblade, I remember when I played Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for the first time, they had the skill trees for each individual blade, even common blades. And I was like, that's just too many skill trees. I'm not even gonna check that.
Yep.
And it turns out you have to check it for the skills to actually equip, which the game doesn't tell you.
Yeah.
So yeah, like when there's just a bunch of menus in a game, I'm just like, no. Which is why I feel like Breath of the Wild 2 can take this concept and use it in its own like open air world feel and make it feel more natural. Because RPGs aren't meant to feel natural. They're meant to feel very like stats and levels and things. But I feel like if you take that concept of being able to use multiple weapons and instead of just doing it in your menus, if there's an actual blacksmith location, maybe you need to gather materials to upgrade the weapons as well, then that will feel more like actual Breath of the Wild mechanic and more naturally fit into that world. Whereas in RPG, it's mostly just about menus and stats and skill trees and stuff. I think that they can change that to work within Breath of the Wild 2's gameplay. So yeah, I don't want it to be copied and pasted how it works in Age of Calamity for sure.
But the idea of improving upon weapons and building that up, I think that's something they can do, and I think it makes sense, especially if there is a lot of rebuilding going on in Breath of the Wild 2. We won't know for sure until we see the game, but it makes sense. Yeah. How do you think the Korok things are gonna play out? Like, do you think there's like a lot of value to collecting them, or is it just gonna be for fun? Like,
I don't think they said anything about what the Korok seeds actually do. I'm sure there's probably hints in like the text box.
Well, there was benefits to collecting the gold Skulltulas in Hyrule Warriors, so maybe the benefits will be similar.
I don't remember. I didn't play that game, so I don't know what the benefits are. So it's hard for me to like predict what the benefits of this will be.
Yeah. But I'm
currently
playing through it right now, so I don't know every detail.
Right. If anybody in the comments has played it and knows what the Skulltulas do, and maybe has a theory on what the Korok seeds could do, let us know for sure. I'm curious, because they showed off Korok seeds, but they didn't say anything about what they do in the game. At least not that I noticed.
I mean, I like the idea of collecting things, but I do hope there's some sort of reward.
There is.
Yeah. Another thing that sort of it brings to mind for me, and I kind of mentioned it, and I didn't just mention it, was a talking point in my video I published today, that maybe, Hatsu is a playable character. Now, I'm not saying like for sure, I'm just simply saying that I think it's a possibility. Like some characters that I thought could maybe be playable in this game, Robbie, Purah, and King Rum, I think all have chances because they are,
I think, very high chances in my opinion.
Yeah, especially King Rum because he has like a icon of his face, and usually that's because those are used for playable characters. So I think maybe that could be the case. A couple other options I sort of threw out there. One would be King Dorephan, the King Zora. He used to fight apparently in the war, so maybe we see something with that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, with the last Hyrule Warriors game, they just took anybody and everybody who could possibly work at all or was an interesting character, even if it didn't make any sense. Like, I obviously, I don't think they're gonna like break the story by allowing Hatsu to be playable like naturally in the campaign. I think it would be like for extra missions and stuff, or like if you want to replay the campaign with these characters. Yeah. But I definitely think that after the main campaign unlocks, there's going to be a lot of extra side content where you can play as these other characters like Hatsu and probably the champion descendants will be playable. I'd be very surprised if they weren't.
You think so? I guess the thing is just because they wouldn't fit necessarily within the plot.
Right, that's why I'm saying they'd probably be unlocked after the main campaign.
Okay, after the main campaign, sorry. Yeah. And I guess that's the thing, though. Like, I don't expect as many characters in this game because it does seem like it's more of a story-driven canon experience of what happened before Breath of the Wild.
Whereas Hyrule Warriors is not canon at all.
Yeah, and the other thing is that, as we noted earlier, it does seem like the movesets are more diverse and there's more to do with each particular character. So there's a lot more attention to detail with this game. So what that may mean is that they're not focusing on having as many characters, but rather just the characters we have, there's more to them. So I'm not expecting as many characters as Hyrule's Definitive Edition, especially because for that one, there was no story holding them back. They can just put whatever they want, really. So there is potentially an issue there, but maybe in post-game, like you said, that there's more flexibility with that. And so maybe we could see a whole bunch of potential Breath of the Wild characters, even if they don't make sense for the current world, like the champion descendants. Now, when it comes to Hatsu, I should say, Hatsu, I don't know how old he is, and maybe that information's out there.
I don't know.
Like, he's obviously not as old as the Deku Tree, but the Deku Tree's been around for
so long,
ages. So I wonder, like, if would Hatsu be about the same, or would he just be a sapling? Hard to say for sure.
He definitely seems older than the other Koroks.
Right, he's like the biggest Korok, so there's something there, and I think if the developers feel like putting in some fun characters that are from Breath of the Wild, Hatsu with maracas would be awesome. Like, seeing him dance and make music as he's destroying hordes of enemies, I think that's just gonna be really fun to just wreck people with maracas. So I really want to see that. Hopefully
I don't think it's, assuming that they haven't confirmed him being younger than, too young to have been alive 100 years ago. It wouldn't
be a retcon if they put him in there. Right. We don't know how old he is, right?
It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to believe he could be that old.
And he could still be like a relatively young Korok. Like, let's say Hatsu's been around for 400 years. You go back 100 years, he may still pretty much be that size, Right. And Koroks aren't the Deku Tree either. I think that's another thing to note. Like, Koroks don't necessarily become another Deku Tree. They're different. So I don't think that we should expect Hatsu to someday become like a giant Deku Tree either. His form may be pretty much his form for I don't know how long, indefinitely. So maybe, he could still be pretty much the same size and physical age, pretty much, in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Let me check in with the chat here real quick. Birdman, because he's talking, he brought up the maracas. I mean, if Link can use a soup ladle, then why not maracas? Brilliant point. If we can use a soup ladle, let us have our maracas with Hatsu.
I mean, when we started Breath of the Wild, we beat up bokoblins with sticks, so...
Yeah, I wouldn't mind using a stick either. Taker610 provided a super chat. Thank you very much, Taker610. Taker610 said, Hatsu can throw seeds. We all know what they are. It rhymes with boop. Yeah, that and just wreck people with it. Golden
with,
poop
with bit.
Yeah. Benjamin W. What if you got to players as a Deku Tree in like an extra area after the main game and got to protect the Master Sword from people or monsters who try to get it during the 100 years? Yeah, that could be a story sequence right there where Hetsu's like, all right, Koroks, let's dance them out of this forest. That's an interesting story sequence. Like, I like that actually. That's a pretty interesting idea. Like, what if that cutscene we seen with Zelda trying to stop Calamity Ganon? What if that isn't like the final thing in the game? There are post-game sequences, like where one, as you brought up, Benjamin, where it's Hatsu in the Korok Forest defending it, or maybe, some years pass and they show the descendants, what have you, or maybe they do something related to the Temple of Time or something. There's different things they could do in the post-game, I think, that could maybe work out.
Well, I mean, they do go in Breath of the Wild story, they have to go put the Master Sword back in the Korok Forest after Link falls, so they might have something there when they're putting it back. Maybe they're getting chased by some monsters.
You know what?
Hatsu defeats them.
I now want to take a look at the footage real quick, because I wonder if, like, maybe, because there's some frames where there is a forest, right? Like, I wonder if Hatsu is in there. Like, can we see Koroks? I feel like there's probably some Koroks in there, but I wonder if, like, we can maybe get a glimpse of Hatsu and we just no one's pointed it out yet.
Don't know.
You know what I mean, though, right? Like, we do have some shots. Like, we might be able to get some details. We take a closer look at that. Maybe. If I can find an image, I will point out to you guys.
I haven't seen anybody notice it yet, though.
I want to say that probably no. I feel like people would have noticed it.
So.
People would have noticed if it was there.
I know Game Explained made their usual analysis video, and I haven't heard about it, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, I'll have to. I'll have to look at it later. Yeah. If anything comes up, I will let you guys know.
Something I have to say, though, Robbie and Kura's designs, their young designs, so good. Good.
That was so unexpected. So unexpected. So they are so cool. Yeah.
They're like these hip, like, punk rock kind of people.
They got some style.
I mean, it makes sense because Pura as a child, it's weird because we're seeing her older than we did in Breath of the Wild.
Physically, yes.
Yeah. So she was very like, it kind of makes sense. Like, you can see it. Also, I've seen people compare it to the some of like the prototype designs before they decided to make like in between designs, because originally they were gonna have it to where Pura gets younger as the story goes on. So they had like this in between teenage year kind of like style. This looks very much like that, and I think it looks great.
I'm trying to see if I can find that here. I can't see it.
I believe the image comes from the Breath of the Wild art book, which I actually have.
Right.
It'd take me way too long to find the pictures and I can pull it out. But
like, I see some concept art, but it's just basically her her child form. I don't see like in between forms.
Yeah, it's something I saw on Twitter and I was like, oh wow, that does look like it. It's not exactly the same, but it's very, very similar. I think she looks slightly older in Age of Calamity.
Oh, well, let me see. I don't know if this is official. Maybe it is. Is it that?
Let's see, wait for the stream to catch up here in a second. Yes, that's it. Yes. So see, she looks like she's older, taller in Age of Calamity, but she got that same like red hair, little punk, rockish nature to her. I feel like they looked at this design and definitely took inspiration from it.
They absolutely did.
Angel Calamity
it just kind of goes to show you that the Zelda team has been assisting Koei Tecmo on this game. Like, all the ideas we're seeing in here are ideas the Zelda team approved on. A lot of it is based off of concept art or ideas that they had beforehand that just didn't put into Breath of the Wild. So we're seeing those ideas come to light, like Purah. So that's cool to see. I wonder what other little things we may end up finding out as well. Like, for example, Master Koga. How is he going to be? Is he going to be the same Master Koga, or is he like an ancestor of Master Koga with the same name? Because the Master Koga in Breath of the Wild is very comical. He's not really that threatening of a boss. He's like the least threatening boss ever. And he's really very clearly out of shape. He's winded during the fight. And he takes himself out and falls down a hole. So I'm curious to see if maybe like the Master Koga in Hyrule Warriors is actually like a serious, really epic threat, you know? Like, he has a different form.
I think he'll be more serious, but I still think they'll be comedic about him, because I feel like he would be Master Koga if they didn't.
Maybe.
But I think he'll be more serious and you don't actually able to fight, because that would make sense if he's a playable character. He'd need actually good moves.
Yeah. So another thing I want to point out to you, Brent, I made a video about it. There is, if you look at the footage for any footage of Age of Calamity and actually Breath of the Wild, we take a look at both games, most of the cutscenes show Link being shorter than Zelda. It's more clear in the Hyrule Warriors scenes, but I made a video and I sort of analyzed it, and to me, my impression was that Link is still is shorter in both, so nothing really changed. But the reason why it was talked about, because a lot of people were talking about on social media, of this one shot of a Link with the Champion's Ballad photo at the end of the DLC. They all take a photo together, and Link is several inches taller than Zelda in that photo. So people were thinking, oh, isn't Link supposed to be taller? But after I took a look at all the cutscenes with Link and Zelda in Breath of the Wild and what we've seen so far of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, I think Link was always supposed to be a little bit shorter than her.
He's always been short.
Right, like most of the time in different Zelda games, Link is shorter than Zelda. Like, it's not like news, really. Sure, it's just weird that there's like this discrepancy that's been noticed, and I wonder why that.
I wonder if it's just like a trick of the eyes, or because it's a 2D photo, maybe you can't tell like he's farther in front or up slightly on something. I have to see the picture to look at it.
So here's the thing. Link is behind Zelda in the photo for the Champion's Ballad. If you're further away, that makes you look smaller.
That should be smaller, yeah.
He looks bigger. And he's not.
I haven't seen the image in so long, so I don't know.
Let me see if I can pull it up for you real quick. Give me a second. I'm gonna pull it up for you real quick.
I haven't seen it since I first beat the game.
I mean, this one. This is one of the images here. It's not even close, dude. So you're gonna see it and you're like, oh yeah, that's not even close. Like, let me know when you see it. I don't know if I picked low latency this time.
There it is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's not close.
No,
it's not.
That's like half a foot. I think he has to be like being slightly picked up.
Either like, that or maybe they're on steps.
You can't see his. Right, you can't see his feet. You can't see where he's standing.
Yeah. So that's
and he's being like grabbed, hugged, almost like like he might be being picked up a little. Like, it's hard to say.
It's
I mean, obviously he is shorter. Like, if every single other picture shows him being shorter, I think it's pretty obvious that this is some kind of logical reason why he's taller here.
It could just be for the appearance of the photos, and they just weren't. They just, you know.
Because if he was the same height, he'd be slightly behind. What's her name?
Mipha?
Yes, Mipha. He'd be like his face would be blocked by her face if they were the same height.
Yeah. The other thing though is if you take a look at this photo right here, if you look at like in this concept art, it's not a concept, but this art, promotional art, like Zelda's height compared to Urbosa's chest, like you see her head is in her chest, and here I feel like Zelda's actually even smaller than Urbosa in this photo. So I wonder if they just shrank Zelda, if anything. Like maybe Link's the same, but they shrank Zelda for this one shot. Or maybe they're just on steps, you know? Hard to say, but it is like a weird visual discrepancy that people have been debating lately. So it's just something that we kind of noticed. But either way, it looks like everything we're seeing in Hyrule's Age of Calamity is approved by the Zelda team. They're working closely with them. There's a lot of attention to detail here. So it's pretty fun to kind of see all the little things we're seeing. So yeah, I think I like everything that we've seen so far for this game. Do you think they're gonna make more like reveals for this game before it comes out?
Probably. They'll probably reveal more playable characters and side missions, because we only know things about the main campaign. We don't know anything about any kind of side content or anything like that, which I'm sure, like, it's a Warriors game. There's gonna be tons of extra side content. That's just, I would be so shocked if there wasn't. And there's definitely more playable characters, at least in, maybe not in the main campaign, but I feel like even in the main campaign, there's more playable characters that we know of. Maybe they don't want to spoil every single one of those, but I definitely feel, yeah, I agree. Which I like how they've been showing off the information, because they've only been showing off very early gameplay. They haven't been going into like story spoilers or anything like that. It's been great, actually. The content they've shown, it's been very much focused on gameplay and not like spoiling things for you, which is great. So I definitely think they'll talk about like side content though, and extra playable characters at the very least, like if Hatsu's playable, or they're gonna talk about that stuff. So I definitely don't think we know everything we're gonna know about the game before it launches.
I mean, also that game, it's not coming out till November, so we have a little bit more time to wait for it. We could see a few more trailer drops, things of that nature. But I think we're pretty much, I mean, I'm sure there's little things we can bring up for this game, but we're pretty much nearing the end of the discussion now, so we're gonna kind of just like transition to doing some questions with the chat. So if you guys have anything, you guys want to ask or bring up, put it out in the chat now so we can get to it. But is there anything else we want to bring up from Age of Calamity, Brandon, before we move on to the chat?
Not off the top of my head, but the chat might give me some ideas.
Yeah. One thing that I did notice, if you watch the final memory for the Champion's Ballad where they take the photo, there's someone taking the photo that isn't a part of the Champions, and it's actually, it's voice acted. It's not just someone that's not voiced. There's someone with a voice, and you don't see who it is. And I want to double check this, but the voice seems really similar to Purah, actually, after hearing her voice in the trailer. So I wonder if it was her. She did do a lot of work with the Sheikah Slate, so it makes sense that she
is really into pictures, and doesn't she ask you to take a picture of her? And she's the one who gives you the camera in Breath of the Wild? Yes. So that would make perfect sense. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Oh, there was one thing that I was excited about, and I was validated on, is that was Lon Lon Ranch. Specifically, it looks almost exactly like the same design from Ocarina of Time.
There was footage of Lon Lon Ranch, absolutely. Like it had,
and I recognized that immediately, because I've played Ocarina of Time to death, so I saw that and I was like, oh, Lon Lon Ranch! That's from Ocarina of Time. I mean, even the ruins in Breath of the Wild, I was like, that looks very much similar to Lon Lon Ranch.
Yeah, apparently.
So after all this time, I know for sure that was Lon Lon Ranch.
So we're going to be able to explore Lon Lon Ranch in Age of Calamity without it, and it won't be destroyed yet. So
it's like a little glimpse of what an Ocarina of Time remake could be.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen some horses in there, but I mean, maybe we still will. Like maybe there'll be some other parts, but that's another thing.
Just didn't want you to murder.
There should be horses in Age of Calamity. I don't think we've seen any horses yet.
Right. That'd be
There are horses
no
in
horses
wars
so far, like,
right? Isn't that strange?
I feel like you should be able to ride. Yeah, I don't think there were horse riding in Hyrule Warriors either. Though.
I haven't seen
the first one.
You can just run fast after a little while. So
you could ride a horse in Fire Emblem Warriors. Some of the characters rode horses, which I mean was kind of like you had to because
maybe they don't believe in fighting on horses in Hyrule. Maybe that's not what they do. Maybe.
But you do.
I mean, there are depictions of battles happening with people riding horses, like in the Breath of the Wild.
There's one in Breath of the Wild too. In the
cave drawing.
Yeah.
Yep. Just checking the chat here. Both Vooper and Birdman are saying it's Purra. Birdman's saying in the credits it says that she has a voice actor. I guess like a young voice actor. So, okay, there you go. So it was already a known thing apparently. I didn't realize.
Makes sense.
Birdman added me. We still haven't seen Mipha's gameplay, so I think we'll see another trailer of it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh yeah. We saw Urbosa and Zelda for the first time, actually, like full moveset, but we have not.
Well, I don't think we see the full moveset for any
character.
Well,
yeah, but a lot more.
Yeah. Another thing though is that for Zelda, we need to talk about this earlier.
We didn't see Rivali moveset either.
No, we haven't. So that they've been happening in pairs, right? So I guess we see Rivali and Mipha together. That makes sense. What I was gonna say though, for Zelda, we've seen that each character seems to have like a play on they have some rune attack options. From what we've seen in Zelda, she only has rune attack options. So she has like a base moveset of rune attack options and then the optional rune attack options as well, which is weird. So she has double rune options. It's like double runes. Yeah. So I wonder, I mean, I guess if just looking at the Link gameplay, like we've seen Link use different weapons. We've seen him use a hammer, we've seen him use a spear, and each time he has a weapon, it's like he's a different character almost. He has a different moveset there. So I guess for Zelda, she's for sure gonna have another moveset where she has her like divine powers. Like I think for sure. Like we've even seen that they like have that final ceiling Ganon. They've had several cutscenes of her in that dress in the final moments fighting Calamity. Like it's totally. There's gonna be that version of Zelda fighting as well, I think. Chronic Calical added me. Do either of you know have opinions on if Outer Worlds on Switch is worth it for $30 off? I only have a Switch and a shitty laptop, so other consoles aren't an option. It will probably be better than your laptop, but to be honest, the Switch version of that game, I mean, you can go watch Digital Foundry's video on it if you want to like know exactly how the game looks, but it's rough. Performance, looks, like it's actually bad enough to impact gameplay in a negative way. So if you say you don't have any other options, so it works and it's an amazing game. It's just literally if you had any other option, I would choose that because it actually is to the point where it impacts the game in a negative way. Yeah, maybe watch some footage on it. Check out Digital Foundry's video on it to see the footage for yourself. And if the footage seems acceptable for you, then go for it. But yeah, I remember when the game came out, like it was surprising at how poorly the game was running on Switch. Yeah. Now it's possible. From what I remember, there was even parts where like things just wouldn't load in. Okay. So you could see through the world and stuff because it just didn't load. Let me do a quick Google search if there have been any patches. No, like I haven't seen it since I saw the video then. So. Yeah. I haven't heard any updates about the game looking any better, and I usually keep up with that kind of stuff. 2 days ago, the Outer Worlds on Nintendo Switch will get a long-awaited patch later this month. Nice. The report says the Outer Worlds is an excellent game, but the Nintendo Switch version was blasted by some critics due to its performance on the system. However, it sounds as though refinements will be coming later this month via software update for Switch version. It's not clear what fixes the patch will contain, but hopefully it'll iron out some issues that the users have experienced. Now, yeah, this is from the Twitter account here. I'll just show you guys. We are working to have one rare later this month. Spacer. The board is making sure that the final touches are being applied before we are able to release it to you. Another is performing your duties on Nintendo Switch. We will announce more details when we can. So there is some sort of patch coming that may make the game run and look a little bit better. So just take that into consideration. There may have been some improvements, but it did not review well because of the performance issues.
Yeah, it's a pretty rough version. Like, if you have literally anything else to play it on, your laptop, you're saying it's not a good laptop, so maybe it might even be worse. But I don't know what laptop you consider to be crappy, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would not recommend that version if you have literally any other way to play the game, because it's so much better on literally every other version. The game is hardly even recognizable as Outer Worlds.
Right.
In that game. So
Taker610 added me. Do you guys think that Yunubo, Riju, Sidon, and others you'll work with to take back the Divine Beast will play champion type roles in Breath of the Wild too? I think there's a good chance, actually, because I feel like the way the story left off for the champion descendants, it felt like there was more to happen with those characters. There was development to be had. Riju's still young. She's, running the Gerudo. She seems like she has a lot to learn.
She was the most interesting out of them, other than Sidon.
But Sidon's really cool. I'm sure people would love to see more of Sidon. And then with Yunubo, Daruk said he was a lot like Yunubo when he was younger, implying that Yunubo can develop and become like Daruk, which is pretty cool. So,
right. I don't know if they'll actually be champions. I don't know if they'll actually use the Divine Beast, because I have theories on it, but I don't even know if the Divine Beast will work anymore in Breath of the Wild 2.
But I do think
we'll
they
have to
could
see
be
on what they'll be in as a part of the story.
They're gonna be the story, and they will have developed.
Yeah, they'll have a big role, and you'll see them. They'll be older, more mature, and they'll have a role in Breath of the Wild 2. But I don't think it will be.
I don't know if it's gonna be a big role either. It might
I think it'll be big. I feel like it will be pretty big.
You think they'll be as big as the previous champ? I don't know if they'll be as big as the previous champions.
I think they will. I'm gonna be honest. I have a feeling that they will. Not in the same way, but I think they'll be just as big.
I don't
just as important.
So I'm hesitant to say just as big, just because we don't know what direction the Breath of the Wild 2 story is gonna go in. There isn't a king to appoint a champion team for the war against Calamity. So I'm not sure what will happen. I do agree, though, that we're going to see some character development with these champion descendants, and I do think that they're going to be taking up more of a role, especially because I feel like, especially now with Age of Calamity, I think that the stories of the original champions is pretty much done. They might still come up a couple times in flashbacks, but they're not going to have as much of a focus anymore.
I think at least some of them are leaders, I can't never remember her name, but the Gerudo kid.
Riju.
She is say it again?
Riju. Riju.
Yes, she is the leader, so I assume you'll probably talk to her a lot, and my theory, and this is a pretty common theory, but I think a lot of Breath of the Wild 2, or maybe not a lot, but some Breath of the Wild 2 will be dedicated to rebuilding Hyrule in a way. So you'll probably talk to them for that, so maybe they'll be helping with the rebuilding efforts, and you'll need to talk to them to get side quests to figure out what to do to rebuild each different nation, I guess. People, or whatever word that's not coming to mind.
Yeah, I think there will be. We're gonna see at least some. You have the whole Terrytown side quest. I feel like there's gonna be more side quests
in the game.
Yeah, there's gonna be more related to that. I think in terms of building up villages and towns.
The Terrytown side quest can either be the most boring side quest or the best side quest, depending on when you do it. If you find it at the very as soon as possible, and then you find each person as you explore, then it's super fun and great. But if you just find it at the end and you're just warping to find each person, that's so boring.
I didn't.
But that concept was so good. If you find it naturally and explore and find these people as you explore and bring them back to Terrytown, it's my favorite.
I don't know if I necessarily agree, because I think I did it the way you're saying is bad. I had played through most of the game by that point, and for me, just completing the side quest and thinking, oh, okay, who fits this description, where can I find this person, that puzzle alone was cool, and then just seeing that the village sort of build up over time, that was still fun for me. Maybe now I'll say that I don't think I did it all at once. So if that's what you're alluding to, then yeah, I think it makes more sense to sort of do it in pieces while you're doing other things in the game. But yeah, it's a great side quest. But continuing on with the chat here, DE Fox, next year is Zelda's 35th anniversary and Sonic's 30th anniversary, and is next year, so next year we could expect Zelda collections and Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 HD on Switch. iSonic also asked, could we see a Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 in 2021? I heard something about like a potential Sonic Adventure tease, but I don't know if that was like legit or not. I feel like we should see another 3D Sonic game sooner or later. I'll also say that usually Nintendo gets some sort of like dedicated 3D Sonic game, and we haven't gotten that for Switch yet, like a ground up Sonic game. So yeah, I don't know if it'll be Sonic Adventure 3, but I would like to see a dedicated Sonic game on Switch. We got one on Wii U, we had one on Wii, Sonic Colors. It was really, really good. Actually, there was several Sonic games on Wii. I'll take that back. But like, there was Sonic Colors, and there was Sonic and the Secret Rings, and there was a Sonic and the medieval one. But Sonic Colors was like like the best one.
Sonic Knights, I think.
Sonic Knights. There was those were some good Sonic games in my opinion, and they were all exclusive for Switch. I would love to see exclusive.
Colors is considered one of the best.
Yeah, Sonic games period. Exactly. So I want to see another one like that on Switch, and I think we could be close to that now because we're starting to see some big games that have been in development for years on Switch from third parties. The biggest one that comes to mind is Monster Hunter Rise, but even some third party stuff like I mean, it's all third party, but multi-platform stuff is what I meant. Like the Phoenix Rising game, for example. It's a huge open world game that's also coming to Switch, which a lot of people would not have expected. So I wouldn't be surprised if next year we see more big third party offerings, perhaps some exclusive ones. I mean, No More Heroes 3 should have come out this year, and that's another one. Probably not as big budget, but still, it's along those lines of a dedicated third party title that's very high quality. So maybe we see something from Sonic next year then. I
could see them releasing Adventure 1 and 2. I don't think it would be exclusive to Switch. I think it would probably be...
No, I was just talking about like a other type of Sonic, but like a 3D one.
You know, if you guys haven't seen it before, there's this Sonic game, this 3D Sonic game it's been in, like, it's a fan project, but it's been in development for like a long time. But it runs with the original Doom engine, and it looks great. And it's a full 3D Sonic game. It's not like the 3D Sonic games we're used to. It's like full, big, open areas that you can run around as Sonic, but it actually works. And it's the craziest thing. Like, it's the like 3D Sonic everybody's been wanting. I don't remember. That's the annoying part, is I don't remember what it's called. But if you guys know what I'm talking about, let me know. I know Digital Foundry made a video on it relatively recently, so you could probably go look back through their videos and find it if you guys are curious. But if you want to see like the potential that a 3D Sonic, like actual like open-ish world 3D Sonic game could be, check that out. Digital Foundry made a video on it like a couple weeks ago or months ago, so you could probably find it pretty easily on their channel. But yeah, it runs on the original Doom engine, and it is super cool. So if they made a Sonic Adventure 3 that worked like that, obviously not on the Doom engine, but in that same like gameplay style, dude, that'd be awesome. Because I mean, it's not a secret that people generally don't like 3D Sonic's direction.
Yeah, but fan Sonic games have been pretty good. I mean, look at Sonic Mania. Yeah. I want to check in with the chat here to kind of close out. There's a couple chats brought up that I want to address, and then we're going to close things out here. So, Taker610 added me. How much time do you think will have passed when Breath of the Wild 2 starts? Wouldn't it be wild if Link is King of Hyrule? That would be wild. But I also want to address Birdman's chat as well, because I feel like they're both related. Birdman added me and said, I think Tarrytown was a hint to what Link and Zelda will do in Breath of the Wild 2. I mean, Zelda also hinted at it in the secret ending. Yes, I mean, Brandon and I have already sort of touched on it already. I think as you said, Birdman, there is implications that there will be rebuilding done in Breath of the Wild 2. And, well, not necessarily Breath of the Wild 2, but the future. That's what Link and Zelda are working at the end of Breath of the Wild. And given that there's a sequel, some time has passed. How much? Hard to say. Link and Zelda still look to be about the same age. So there's that. Now, one thing that might be interesting to check, actually, because we were talking about Link's height earlier, and that might actually be important, because both of them are, like, not really adults, you know what I mean? Like, they're in their late teenage years. If Link is all of a sudden taller than Zelda in Breath of the Wild 2, that would imply that he's actually grown. So that would suggest a few years of time, and then maybe they're both like in their early 20s now instead, and Link is fully grown now. So if
I wonder if you could see that in the trailer, because I don't think anybody has like thought about that to check. I haven't noticed.
I want to say that the answer is probably no, and that he's probably about the same size. But I haven't analyzed it, so that's just kind of an idea that came up now. So maybe we'll.
Probably.
Maybe that's a video idea. Okay, so we'll just
because
maybe
he's still like an adult, very much. He's like 17, 18 or something like that. Like he's considering
he's
like this. Yeah, he's a knight.
He's put in charge of protecting Zelda, so like he has the adult responsibilities.
Yeah. He is an adult Link. Like he's not a child Link.
Right, but adult Link in Ocarina of Time, the original.
He's like 17.
He's 17, so
yeah.
And he's not very tall either. So I just wonder if there's still some development to be had there. I'm not saying there will be. I'm completely fine with where Link is at now, but I'm just saying that if we notice a difference between the two, that would tell us that some time has passed. That's all I'm getting at here. So that could maybe that's like the only thing I can think of that can maybe give us a hint in terms of how much time has passed from what we know right now.
You know what would be epic for one day in a Zelda game if they made Link like older, like in his 20s. Wouldn't that be cool? Like we've never seen Link older. We've seen Link at like 10 and 17. That's it. We've never seen Link like older than that. Like it would be really cool to see.
I'll also say that
like
I feel like a 17, 18-year-old Link isn't that different from a 28, 26-year-old Link. Like a little
depends, like what they want to do with the design.
Like if you're referring to like having like facial hair and stuff like that, being a little like the kind of Link they could actually go into a bar and have a drink, kind of Link.
Yeah, dude, I'd love that personally. I think that would be super cool. Will they ever do that? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe one day.
But just kind of getting back to the point I was getting at, we don't know how much time has passed, so that's why I'm going to kind of look into that later. It's an interesting thing to consider. But I've sort of guessed at least maybe a couple, like a year or two maybe. It might be less, but the only reason I say that, like if they do, like let's say they have it be a 2-year time skip since Breath of the Wild 1, the end of it, I think that'll be enough time for us to start seeing some villages be around, some towns being fully rebuilt, so there would be a lot more communities and towns to explore. But there still would be a rebuilding, restoring effort, so that could be a big element to the side quest, as what we've seen with Tarrytown. So, you know, I that's what I'm sort of thinking. I don't know how much time has actually passed, but now I want to take a look to see if there's any sort of, like, take another look at Breath of the Wild 2 to see if there's any hints with that. But I definitely think there's a lot more potential with this rebuilding and, like, side quests. I think that's something that can be improved upon in Breath of the Wild 2. The side quests, like while I did enjoy the side quests in Breath of the Wild, it still wasn't the best side quest game. Majora's Mask has the best side quests, so it'd be interesting to see if they can improve upon that. Say that again?
I said Majora's Mask side quests are amazing.
Yeah, so it's like the best part of the game, arguably. So, you know, given that it's a sequel and then they've been spending so much time on this game, I think there's going to be a lot of content in there. And I hope that also translates to a lot of really compelling side quests to like a Majora's Mask kind of level, but obviously on a grander scale because the scope of Breath of the Wild is far, far larger than the older Zelda games. Birdman added me again. It's weird that Nintendo shows Age of Calamity instead of Breath of the Wild 2 a game before the original. Well, I just think this is meant to kind of hold us over, and that's pretty much it. And it is sort of giving us details about things that we didn't have. Like, I think they did the Champions Ballad, and we were hoping that would give us more information about the champions, and it did. But there was still... It wasn't satisfying enough to the point where I felt like, okay, if they told us the whole story. No, there's still story to be told, and now we're going to get that story. So between, you know, the primary cutscenes in Breath of the Wild, and the Champions Battle DLC, and Hyrule's Age of Calamity, I feel like between all of that, we'll then have pretty much an all-encompassing story of the champions.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
We won't know for sure until we get the game.
They don't want to talk about Breath of the Wild 2 right now because that's just going to overshadow everything
they're going to wait
doing in Age of Calamity. So it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They want to talk about and they want to finish the story for Breath of the Wild before they reveal and talk about the story for Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Taker610 says something funny. Bolson Construction will rebuild Castletown. Can you grab 5,000 bundles of wood, Link? Only 5,000. Just you have to like basically drag an entire forest over. I don't know. Maybe there might be something like that.
Just gone. It was taken for wood to rebuild towns.
The Deku Tree offers himself up to rebuild Castletown.
You just go back and it's just stumps, just everywhere. Just a giant Deku Tree stump. You're like, what have they done?
Yeah, that'd be nuts. But. You know, we'll see what kind of happens this week, guys. We're pretty much done with the discussion now. I'll say that there has been some speculation that maybe we get a partner showcase that might be in the works. We've been pretty much getting like some sort of Nintendo announcement every week or like every week and a half. It wouldn't shock me there's a partner showcase. Maybe we do see Bravely Default 2 there. That's possible. I don't really have expectations for this week. Like, something could happen. I'm just kind of being reactive now. Like, I'm not expecting anything necessarily. If it happens, I react to it. So we'll see what happens this week. But that's because pretty much everything that Nintendo needs to talk about for the holidays has already been talked about, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
I guess Minecraft Steve is coming out in like a day and a half. So we have that to look forward to this week. Playing the new Smash update. And then the week after will be the Pokemon DLC, and then the week after will be Pikmin 3. So just in terms of like new Nintendo content stuff, we have that to look forward to at least. But we'll see what happens with the news.
I just kind of, for the rest of October, I'm expecting the news to be slowed down a little bit. I think maybe we'll get a partner showcase, and I think maybe they'll wait for Pikmin 3 to be released and then talk again about Age of Calamity and hype that up leading up to its release and give us more details about that. But I'm not expecting us to keep the same level of news pace that we have been having.
It's going to slow down, I think, because
we have
slow down in a way. Yeah, because we're going to be talking about the actual games instead. So there's that. But you know, Birdman's hoping for another trailer for Breath of the Wild 2. We might get that at the Game Awards. That's going to be after all the holiday releases, pretty much, probably.
Whenever we get it, it's going to at least be after Age of Calamity.
A
decent amount.
Yeah. So December is pretty much the earliest I expect to see Breath of the Wild 2 stuff. But it could be a little bit later. But we'll just have to wait and see. But that's pretty much it for tonight's discussion. Is there anything else you want to bring up, Brandon, before we say goodbye to everyone?
No, I think we covered everything.
Very good. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Leave a like. That would be greatly appreciated. Make sure to check out Brandon's channel. It's also linked in the description below. And we shall be seeing you soon. Take care.
Bye, guys.